Revelation 11, the final atonement, the court not measured. Dr. Ford, 1980, Part 2. The Ankerberg interview of Dr. Ford and everything subsequent to this day leaves one without any idea of He Who Made in context of Revelation chapter 13, and yet He Who Made is specifically mentioned there. Nor for that matter that has to be solved is what is precisely meant by the everlasting gospel to its fullest bearing of the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world, and eternal righteousness, Revelation 13:8. That light was not available in 1980. This review of Dr. Ford on the Ankerberg show led to the review of a small detail concerning the sanctuary doctrine in Revelation 11 and why exactly the court is not measured. This is the entire purpose of this discussion. But first, the fact is, Paul was saying for those with eyes to see that there is the necessary corporate cleansing. Hebrews 9:23 of the heavens as typified in the daily and yearly service of Leviticus 16. That's one basic thing, but due to the events of Luke 21:24 in 1980 and Laodicea voiding the first angel's message, that warning, with fundamental beliefs number 2 and 4, well, guess what happened? The answer is Christ's ministration as high priest moved from the corporate to the individual in 1980, which is unto the final ministration of the final atonement. Hence the call to come out of corporate Laodicea. It is spewed. Revelation 3. The fact about Laodicea in Revelation 3, the true witness said Laodicea, a corporate entity, is spewed, and then as per the type, Leviticus 16, the high priest moved unto the final ministration in the court. But here comes the problem. The angel instructs John to not measure the courts. Revelation 11. The final ministration of the court, there in Revelation 11, will be the second portion of this Dr. Ford discussion. So don't leave, or you will miss a most stunning conclusion about Revelation 11. More later. While Dr. Ford says the atonement was completed at the cross, and Paul said it is necessary the heavens be cleansed, the question that has to be asked is this: what actually is completed, and what exactly is that in light of the first angel's warning and to worship He who made? What is the distinction of righteousness by faith with eternal righteousness by faith? What does John mean? Salvation is of the Jews. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. If you hadn't noticed, Jesus in John 4:22 is saying the sanctuary doctrine is about salvation and is true. It contends empirically the high priestly atonement was not finished at the cross. Or why then is Christ of the order of Melchizedek? There in Psalms 110 and Hebrews 7. These questions about Revelation chapter 11 that states the court is not measured have to be answered and should be foremost on anyone's interest about the three angels' message and verity, because the conclusion about the final ministration of individual on the Day of Atonement is clear, simple, and astonishing. More later. Until when? And that is found in Daniel 8:13-14. The word admite is until when, and that is 1844. The time clock parable of biblical history consisted of the workers at 12 and 3, meaning the Millerites and the Seventh-day Adventists, which in tandem fulfilled Revelation 14:67. And yes, the National Sunday Law was very real in the late 1890s. That was because the first angel was preached as the Sabbath truth, Revelation 14:6 and 7. There was yet to be realized the prophetic scenario in reference to the first angel was the eternal identity and eternal righteousness of Christ in its bearing with Revelation 13:8 and the war with the first beast and second beast of that same chapter. This quintessential detail of Revelation 13:8, which is all about eternal righteousness by faith, exceeds the reformational doctrine of righteousness by faith by Luther at Worms in 1517. The change in the prophetic schematic. So, now consider what took place after Glacier and the introduction of the 27 Fundamentals in 1980, which saw the fall of Laodicea betraying her sacred trust, and the timing could not have been any worse for Laodicea, which was that in 1980 saw the literal fulfillment of Luke 21:24, the close of the times, stationary times of the nations. The present truth portion of the final atonement agenda for the individual began after the spewing of Luke 21:24. Why? The spewing was on account of the rejection of John 1:1. And note that the Sabbath was never rejected by Laodicea. Yet it was the acceptance of Triune Trinity as enshrined in Fundamentals 2 and 4 that caused the spewing. Decree Nisi, Jeremiah 3:8. The first angel theological issue is no longer 1844, January 14. The issue is in respect to the first angel began with the introduction of the Shema of one God, Deuteronomy 6:4, about the doctrine of God in 1980, which according to Laodicea was the Trinitarian formulation, which involves Fundamentals 2 and 4, and they are in total opposition to John 1:1 and the first angel's warning. The sounding of the first angel and second angel in the form of fallen Laodicea is now in relation to the rejection of John 1:1 in 1980, and besides, the three wavy lines of the baptism, Eucharist, and ministry logo is comported into the Laodicean logo, and that says it all. First angel's warning is no longer the Sabbath. The fall of Babylon, rather than just being the past truth of the churches that rejected the first angel, the Sabbath proclamation, while true, does not constitute present truth, since the matter of the first angel 1980 proclamation in print now involves John 1:1 and will involve the fourth angel in the form of the second angel's message. EGW mentions this repetition that is to be given to the church, and this should not sound strange, since the inclusion of the Trinitarian doctrine in the statements of belief, which the World Council of Churches views the Trinity as a way of bringing the churches together by way of common belief, the Trinity, and apparently this constitutes a New Testament Shema by way of the recognition of the supreme doctrine of the Magisterium of Rome, which is the Trinity. This fact necessitates a repetition of the first and second angel's message. But now, in view of the great calamity which will involve the Mother Church in the very literal sense of its downfall on the Mediterranean Sea, and that's in Revelation 17, 16 to 18. Since it will literally in the very literal sense of its downfall in the Mediterranean Sea, since it will literally be imploded, and the smoke will be seen by the shipmasters and those who make their employment in the sea, meaning the Mediterranean Sea. Revelation 17, 16 to 18 says, And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Now see Revelation 18, 16 to 20, which says, And saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple, scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, and all the company and ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, Alas, alas, the great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou barren, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. Babylon has truly fallen, will be a monumental event, since that event marks the time frame of the 10 kings of Revelation 17, 12 to 16, and Revelation 18, as well as the warning of the approaching mark of the beast, which involves the first angel. This fact now places the controversy in full display, so that the world can witness the contrast between John 1:1, which is synonymous with the first commandment, and the first angel's warning, which is contrasted by way of the erroneous one God interpretation of Deuteronomy 6:4, which is to be placed on the forehead and right hand. See Deuteronomy 6:8. This is in stark contrast to the requirement of the first angel, which is the recognition of John 1:1 and Psalms 110, 1-4, as well as the first commandment of the 10 commandments. The imposition of the 7 Noahide laws marks a departure from the first commandment and presents the first angel in the form of void consciousness, and its invocation at the 10 kings, as well as Isaiah 2, proclamation of a law coming from Jerusalem city. But as we all know, the law already came from Mount Sinai. It is this upcoming oppressive law which places in full emphasis on the oneness of God and is in opposition to the duality of God as seen in Genesis 1:26 and Psalms 110, 1-4, as well as Isaiah 44:6 and John 1:1, as well as Daniel 7:13. First angel's warning. Therefore, the final atonement, the last ministrations of the individual in the court, all relates to the first angel's warning. This is since 1980 in fulfillment of Luke 21:24. The altar in the court involves recognition of the first angel and departure from the corporate body. Involves departure after the fall of the mother, since the daughters have the same DNA of Trinity as their common belief. The last manifestation of the problem involves the name of Beni David, probably Asher, and his number, as well as his image, invoking the one God of the Shema, along with 7 Noahide laws. All seen through the lens of the Kabbalah book. Final atonement, the court, Revelation 11. The final part of the final atonement ministration in the court, measure not the court for the individual, but involves missing dimension of Luke 21:24, which is the parable of the fig tree, the conclusion of the ancient prophecy of Genesis 9:27. The enigma of Revelation 11 is the command that the court not be measured. It says, "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth." It is now evident from Revelation 11:1 that equals the heavenly temple is to be cleansed, and it is a fact Christ, after the order of Melchizedek, is fully involved the matter of Hebrews 9:23, and there is a cleansing of the heavenly, and the cleansing on the Day of Atonement of where sin began, which is in heaven. It says, "And there it was therefore necessary the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these." The instruction in Revelation 11 confirms this necessary cleansing of the heavens. The measurement of the temple of God and the altar, most holy place and holy place in heaven, and also those who worship therein. There was an atonement for those angels who stayed but never became the 1/3 who were cast out. Revelation 11:2 presents a problem, the court, and it's not to be measured. Problems in Revelation pursuant to the problems in Daniel. Revelation 11, rod of measurement, but measure not the court. The reed like a rod is the measure of the cleansing of Hebrews 9:23. Revelation 11:1. But Revelation 11:1-2 brings about the conclusion of the cleansing of the heavenly temple. The Day of Atonement in relation to the conclusion of Daniel 8:14, "Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed," equals the heavenly in Hebrews 9:23. The command to not measure the court, the earth, the court, equals Revelation 11:1-2. "And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months." The conclusion of Hebrews 9:23 is the corporate cleansing in heaven. It was therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified, katharzo, with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. Keep in mind the closure of the time for corporate atonement of church, nation, entities on earth was 1980. That's Luke 21:24. Which, according to the sanctuary doctrine, Leviticus 16, is then followed by the individual ministration, the time following 1980. Also to be noted carefully is why Luke records the events of the parable of the fig tree, there in Luke 21:29-31. And something strange arises. The stealth attack on the first angel's warning commences in 1980. Yes, of all things. The testimony of he who made on the doctrine of God is the first angel's message, and that testimony exposes the stealth heresy of the Trinity doctrine and also the emanation teaching of Arianism. How do you explain the acceptance of the one God Trinity doctrine as the doctrine of God for Laodicea? See Fundamentals 2 and 4. God states that when the 42 months or 1260 days commences, there is the blasphemy of the heavenly temple because it is cleansed. and those that dwell therein is very intense blasphemy and includes the war against the saints. Revelation 12:17. To blaspheme God's tabernacle is to blaspheme the ministration of Christ after the order of Melchizedek, which is an attack on the reality of Ezekiel 9, the man with the writer's inkhorn, the seal of God. Reread Revelation 13. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. The two witnesses enter the drama during those 42 months. That's the 3.5 years. And for all of that is the strange reaction, which is emphasized as blasphemy and the treading down of the heavenly temple. And the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. And this is the reverse scenario of the duration of how Jerusalem was trodden down until the times of the Gentiles were fulfilled in 1980. No different. It's the serpent's reaction to Jerusalem above, the mother of us all, and the reality of Hagar is in bondage with her children and trodden down since AD 70 to 1980. Lucifer's instruction is to blaspheme and tread down the heavenly. Why? For the defense of the third temple. And as you know, it's Isaiah 2 and the 7 Noahide laws. The 1/3 cast out know their time is up, and their king, Abaddon, is released. In Revelation 9, it includes 4 angels chained in the great river Euphrates. And this blasphemy of the heavenly temple is their response. The stalwart of heaven, of the 2 witnesses, and their testimony of heaven cleansed. Hebrews 9:23. Yes, all coinciding with the 42-month reign of the first beast of Revelation 13.